Have you ever been kind for so long that people stopped asking and started expecting? At first, they needed help. Then slowly, they needed access. Maybe in your life, it was not a wooden gate. Maybe it was your phone, your weekends, your money, your quiet attention, your ability to listen even when you were tired. Maybe it was the family chat that never stopped asking. The workplace that called you reliable, but treated you as replaceable. The neighbor who came once for help, then began walking into your life like your time belonged to them. This is how kindness becomes dangerous. Not because kindness is weak, but because unprotected kindness teaches the wrong people that your life has no door. And when you finally close one small part of yourself, they act wounded. They say you have changed. They say you are no longer the person you used to be. They do not ask why you are tired. They only ask why the door is no longer open. But sometimes, life does not give you peace by making everyone understand you. Sometimes, life gives you peace by showing you who only loved your kindness when it was available without limits. This is the story of Naren, a carpenter who spent his life keeping his gate open for everyone, until the day the village tried to take the one gate he had built for himself. Stay with this story, because there may be a place in your own life where people stopped knocking and began calling it love. Naren lived in a small old town where the market road curved around a banyan tree. His house stood near the end of a narrow lane. The walls were clay, the door was old, and the wooden gate in front of his courtyard never stayed closed for long. Naren was a carpenter. His hands were patient. His voice was quiet. He was the kind of man who noticed a broken stool before anyone asked him to repair it. He noticed a loose wheel, a cracked shelf, a widow carrying something too heavy. And because he noticed, people came. At first they came with respect. "Naren, can you help me with this?" "Naren, only if you have time." "Naren, I will pay you next week." He smiled and helped. He believed goodness should not need too many conditions. His father, Dev, watched him from the courtyard sometimes. Dev was older now. His back had bent. His hands still remembered the shape of wood, but they no longer had the strength to command it. He would watch people come and go through Naren's gate and say nothing for a long time. But sometimes, after the courtyard grew quiet, he would look at his son and say, "A house without a gate is not generous, Naren. It is unprotected." Naren would smile gently. "They are good people, Baba." And Dev would answer, "Good people still need to knock." Naren heard him, but he did not understand him yet. Over the years, the village learned Naren's rhythm. They learned when he woke, when he worked, when he ate, when he rested, and slowly they learned how to enter before asking. A neighbor borrowed his tools and returned them dull. A cousin asked him to repair a chest and forgot to mention payment. A merchant asked for one quick favor, then returned with 3 more. A family asked him to fix a wedding frame. Just this once. And every time, Naren said yes. Not because he had endless strength, but because saying no felt heavier than doing the work. That is how many kind people become trapped. Not in one cruel moment, but in 100 small moments where disappointing someone feels more frightening than disappointing themselves. Maybe you know that feeling. You answer the message because ignoring it feels rude. You say yes because explaining your no feels exhausting. You keep giving because being called kind has become part of how you know you are loved. Naren's life was not stolen in one dramatic moment. It was borrowed in small pieces by people who never returned the cost. And because he rarely complained, everyone believed nothing was being taken. They called him generous. They called him dependable. They called him a good man. But sometimes praise is not love. Sometimes praise is the ribbon people tie around the part of you they still want to use. There was one dream Naren had carried quietly for years. He wanted to open his own workshop near the market road. Not just a corner behind his house, not just a place where people came through his courtyard and interrupted his meals. A real workshop, with a sign, a bench, shelves for tools, and a gate that opened only when he chose to open it. For months, Naren saved money. He worked late after finishing everyone else's small requests. He bought teakwood from a trader. He polished brass hinges. And every night, under a small oil lamp, he carved the gate himself. It was simple, but beautiful. Along the top, he carved small lotus flowers, not large enough to impress the whole village. Only enough to remind himself that something can rise from mud and still belong to the light. Dev watched him work. This time the old man did not warn him. He only sat nearby and sharpened a small chisel. One night, Oren stepped back and looked at the gate. His fingers were sore. His shoulders ached. But his eyes were alive. To everyone else, it was just wood. To Naren, it was the first doorway into a life that was his own. For the first time in years, he was not only building for others, he was building a boundary around his own future. The trouble began 3 days before the workshop was supposed to open. The whole village had gathered near the banyan tree for a wedding announcement. There were garlands hanging between posts, children running through dust, women carrying brass plates, men speaking loudly in the shade. Naren came only to offer blessings. He stood near the edge of the crowd, quiet as always. Then, Mahesh, a distant relative with a loud voice and an easy smile, stepped forward. He spoke about family, about honor, about how the wedding should show the whole village their unity. Then he turned toward Naren. And of course, Mahesh said, smiling wider, our dear Naren will bring that beautiful gate he has made. We will place it at the entrance of the wedding courtyard. What better gift from such a generous man? The crowd turned. Some people smiled, some nodded, someone clapped. Then more people clapped. Naren felt a sound close around him. He had not offered, he had not agreed. But in front of everyone, Mahesh had placed his kindness on display and called it consent. Naren's mouth went dry. He thought of the workshop, the opening day, the hinges he had polished, the lotus flowers he had carved after midnight. If he gave the gate away, the workshop would not open. If he refused, he would embarrass Mahesh in front of the whole village. Mahesh stepped closer and lowered his voice. But not enough. It is only wood, he said. Family should not have to ask twice. Naren looked at the people waiting for his yes. Then he heard his father's old words inside him. Good people still need to knock. Naren breathed once. Then he said, no. The clapping stopped. It was such a small word, but it made the whole crowd feel like a door had closed. Stay with this moment. Because what comes after "ano" often reveals whether people loved your kindness or only loved their access to it. No one shouted immediately. That would have been easier. Instead, silence spread through the village like smoke. Mahesh's smile hardened. A few people looked away. Someone whispered, he has changed. Another voice said, it is only a gate. Then came the sentence that struck deeper than anger. He had time for strangers, but not for his own blood. Naren stood still. He wanted to explain. He wanted to say he had helped Mahesh's family for years. He had repaired their doors, fixed their cart, built shelves they never paid for. He wanted to say this gate was not extra. It was the last piece of his beginning. But guilt rose faster than words. That evening, people passed his house more slowly than usual. They looked toward the courtyard. Some did not greet him. One woman said loudly enough for him to hear, he used to be kind. Another answered, maybe the workshop made him proud. Naren sat beside the unfinished gate, long after sunset. The wood looked different now, not peaceful, accused. He touched one carved lotus and wondered if he had become small-hearted. This is the trap good people know too well. You can give for years, then protect one thing. And suddenly,